Welcome back to another episode of Lost in the Farmer's Market Garden Shorts, where today we're going to be talking about some plants in the holiday collection. Now this plant here, we're going to zoom in just a little bit for your benefit, is something else. What is that? Well, its scientific name is Euphorbia tithymaloides, prehistoric. Now that's quite a name. It does indeed look like something you'd expect to maybe be trampled by a stegosaurus in the prehistoric eras. It looks like a bunch of those cycads that we only have the depictions of as artist guesswork from fossil records. But this plant is noticeably different than other devil's backbones for the short stem internodes that make the stem actually look like it's zigzagging, but only barely. Almost like a failed line of cursive writing. The leaves are densely packed. It almost looks fern-like, but it's not. This plant belongs to the Euphorbiaceae family, which, as you may well know, is commonly called the spurge family, and as I've mentioned before in probably way too many videos, is most exemplified by the poinsettias. They are known for having caustic latex sap that can irritate mucous membranes, and that some crazy people have used as medicine, much to their detriment. Some people say that it is a cancer cure. However, studies are out on that one, but I digress. Now, this particular variety of Euphorbia tithymaloides is interesting because it's got a mutation where the stems don't properly shred. Usually on a normal devil's backbone, which is its common name, the stems stretch out to upwards of an inch and a half between nodes. Mutations are a great thing, and someone spotted this weird plant out of thousands in a row and said, "I want the midget ones." Whoever you are who did that, thank you. Now, devil's backbone is actually native to tropical and subtropical North America and Central America, so it is a native, which is really cool. But it gets better than that. It is hardy in USDA zones 9B through 11. It prefers a soil pH of 6.1 to 7.8, and its exposure is bright indirect. I have yet to test putting one out in southern sun yet. Acclimating one to southern sun and putting it out. I'm going to try that next summer, but that's totally off the cuff. Its height can be 6 to 8 feet with age, not immediately. The specimens I have here, maybe 2 feet at most. This one with its short internodes may never reach that height, actually. So I wouldn't necessarily count on that. I would say this one maybe 2 to 3 feet, tops, with age. Just guessing. The normal width for this species is 18 to 24 inches, and it's loose and airy, and that zigzagging shape may also be a biological thing so that it can hook onto and scramble up other plants to get to light. We've seen this in climbing aloe, where its actual leaves have a hook on the end so they can cling to other plants so they can outgrow them. Biological competition is rife in the plant kingdom. And you thought your problems at the job were bad. Woo, water cooler. Well, anyway, here's some interesting facts for this. Now, the normal sounding common names, and there are a lot of them, but the ones that were most interesting were red bird cactus, fiddle flower, and slipper spurge. See that spurge word again? Almost any member of the Euphorbiaceae family will inevitably get a nickname of spurge something or other. So we understand that, and the slipper part has to do with the flowers. Someone thought they looked like slippers, okay? Fiddle flower. The flowers do kind of look like little red fiddles, and red bird cactus is because the flowers also kind of look like a bird from a certain angle. A red bird. Good. Now here's the messed up common names for this one. Japanese poinsettia. It's not even endemic to Japan. Why? Why? Agronomist, why? But anyway. Jew bush. No, I'm not kidding. You can look this up. It's even on Wikipedia. I've looked up all the names, and that is like, why do you call it that? I don't know. Jacob's ladder, because the obligatory biblical reference for naming a plant just has to be in there. I can understand that one, though. If you look at the way the stems on the not necessarily prehistoric, but the bigger versions of this plant, they kind of wind upward. And I guess that's sort of Jacob's ladder. Boy, they come up with all kinds of names for these things. Well, anyway, the primary pest of this plant are cabbage worms, which prefer to chew on this and also prefer to chew on other things, another related species. Now, cabbage worms are an easy thing to deal with. You just get some pyrethrum spray and knock those buggers out. You look for damage, but they'll chew the leaves. And on this case, you really don't want that. On the variegated type with the pretty colors, you definitely don't want that. Now, what's interesting is that this plant was introduced as a houseplant in 1688 through Amsterdam, which means it came from the New World to Amsterdam probably. Though I've heard instances of it appearing elsewhere. So Amsterdam is the first time in Europe. Not bad. So it's been around and it's very well understood. The flowers do attract hummingbirds, probably because they're bright red and they probably have a fair amount of nectar. All parts of the plant are toxic. Much like Euphorbia's, it has a milky sap that is slightly caustic. It's noted to be corrosive in this case to some extent or another, and irritates mucous membranes, the whole 9 yards. So keep away from the pests. Definitely keep it away from that special kid who thinks everything's salad. Now what's interesting is that this plant will tolerate saline soil, which, if you've got salted land, you have other problems, I think. And anyway, so, now in terms of growing, I have a few of these, and I found two things. Firstly, they tend to slow down in the winter just like every other succulent I've ever mentioned does. They do appreciate a regular fertilizer, but they need more than bright indirect light for interior growing. You're going to have to get either grow lights or partial sun when they're outside during summer. The soil doesn't really matter because you can treat them essentially like a houseplant. They are a succulent, but you treat them less like a succulent and more like a houseplant, so basic potting soil is fine. I wouldn't worry about pH adjustments so much. They're not very picky. The one thing you should never ever do, though, is allow them to have wet feet and cold soil. Or rather, let me put it this way. Cold, wet soil for a long period, because they will get root rot. Euphorbias will get root rot. It's not immediate, and it's not guaranteed, but based on the cuttings, and I can say that they'll get root rot at the drop of a hat if you're not careful. Root rot is usually a bacterial infection that basically turns the roots into pulp. It's like Ebola for plants. It's pretty horrible. So obviously, leave gaps between watering, allow the soil to reasonably dry out. This plant can survive a lot, but you gotta have that watering cycle. I mean, growing season, water once, maybe every week. Cold season, maybe once or twice a month tops, depending on whether or not the soil is dry, because this plant will not noticeably wilt and tell you when it's dry. Now, as for prehistoric here, it's just cool looking. I mean, it's dense, it's neat, it's packed, it almost looks like a weird kind of fern. What's not to love? Now, it isn't variegated, but who knows? Maybe they have one that is. Maybe I just haven't seen it yet. We shall see. But these are my cuttings for this year. They're going out at the market, and you might be able to nab you some. That's all we have for you today. So, if you like this episode, please hit the like. If you haven't subscribed, please do. And if you have any comments or questions, if you're growing some of these redbird cacti, I'd love to hear what you do. As always, folks, keep them growing, and thanks for watching.